on the William Jardine, which was the barkentine. My great-grandfather Philip Myers, with his wife Eleanor and 4 of his children, arrived in 1841 in Sydney. At that particular time, my great-grandmother was pregnant, and the baby was expected to be born when it arrived in Sydney. But due to sickness on the boat, it was quarantined, and the baby was delivered on the boat. And the ship's manifest showed him to be 2 days old when they landed. George Myers was born on the Sydney harbour, and his original name was Gumpets. For some unknown reason, I can't trace where that came from, but eventually he changed it to George. Now, in 1862, my grandfather, who was a young lad of about 20, came to Brisbane and started as a peddler. Evidently, he made sufficient money so that in 1862 he opened a business in Queen Street, above which were the premises where he lived. And in 1890 he went and built in Edward Street a 5-storey warehouse, which is known today as the Metro Arts Building. Well, now, in 1865, the Jewish residents of Brisbane, which numbered about 14 at that particular stage, got together and decided to form what we now know as the Brisbane Hebrew Congregation. They worked very hard between 1865 and 1885 to raise the necessary funds to build the synagogue, and it is on record that it was opened free of debt, which is a milestone in anybody's language with such a small handful of people. My grandfather worked very hard to get the congregation together and the synagogue built, and that on the opening he was presented with a beautiful illuminated address in a lovely frame which hung in his office for many, many years. Upon his death, that was handed over to my father, and in due course my father handed over to me. When the synagogue was originally built, it was only after exhaustive properties were purchased and sold until they got what they actually wanted in a quiet area, and there was nothing between the synagogue and the gardens. It was an open space and easy for us to walk down on holy days and Yom Kippur, etc., for a walk in the gardens. As years went by, the buildings began to be erected, and she became an industrial area and business area. Around North Quay and Roma Street and George Street lived quite a number of Jewish families who wished to be close to the synagogue. Harris Court, which still remains there in George Street, was also occupied by Jewish families, and my grandfather lived in Roma Street. I might mention in passing that he was the second Jewish person to be married in Brisbane before the Brisbane Hebrew Congregation built the synagogue. The marriage certificate of my grandfather, George Myers, and Amelia Myers, which states, according to the custom of the British Jews, that certificate, and also the one from the state, which states a copy of the marriage certificate. giving all the details of where they were married, how old they were, and everything else in connection with it. My father, Herbert Myers, was born in 1869 in the premises above the shop in Queen Street. He worked with his father in the shop downstairs, and eventually he married my mother, Jane Lipstein. He was married in 1900, and in 1902, on the 2nd of September, yours truly, Arthur George Stanley Myers, was born. I attended the Miss Mosley's kindergarten school when I was 4 in the Holy Trinity Church grounds in the valley, opposite the police station. This particular kindergarten is still functioning today, but under a different name and in the same place. Unfortunately, due to the pogroms that took place in Poland, Russia, and other European countries, and every time there was a pogrom, we would get an influx of members, and they would come down through Vladivostok or Harbin down the coast. Our original congregation, I would say, was mainly of European descent. Then we had the influx of Russian, which was quite a large number, Polish and German. They were very learned Jewish people and considerably helped the congregation on its way. We had got to the stage where our seating accommodation was not sufficient to take all the applicants for membership. So what we did, we put some benches between the Ark and the Almema to take the overflow. After a few years of the seats being in front of the Almema, some of our ultra-religious members decided that it was not correct to have anything between the Ark and the Almema. No obstacles should be there. So that the seating was removed again and placed this time behind. I might mention we also had in those days a lovely mixed choir, ladies and gentlemen, which of course was ruled later as being unorthodox and had to be cancelled. And then we only had ladies in the choir. Unfortunately, as the years went by, the ladies became fewer and fewer, and the choir finished. The synagogue in that early period was illuminated by gas jets. We had 5 big chandeliers suspended from the ceiling with many gas jets attached, and these were raised and lowered on pulleys for lighting purposes. And on a Shabbos evening, there was great competition amongst the boys who would be permitted to light them. The Naya Talmud in front of the Ark was illuminated by kerosene. That was also raised and lowered, and we all took it in turns to fill the font on a Friday evening before Shabbos so that it would carry through for the week. Eventually, that was reversed upside down and converted to electricity, as you see it today. The menorah stand, as we see it today, was originally the base of our first reading pulpit in front of the Ark. And during the war years of the First World War, the Smith family in Melbourne wanted to make a donation to the synagogue as a memorial to one of the members of their family, and they built that present pulpit as we see it and the reading desk was taken upstairs and put in the room and left there for many years. It so happened that our treasurer at the time, Mr. Portrait, saw it one day and got the idea that if the trustees would hand it over to him, he would make it into a beautiful menorah for us, which we did. And the result was that half of that stand was the reading desk and the balance was the new part of the menorah, where it is today. The synagogue steps leading up to the ark were of marble, and there had been a few accidents because marble is a very slippery surface. So the board decided that we would carpet it as you see it today, and that's how it remains. In the late 1930s, I think it was, the synagogue was very badly infested with cockroaches. And we had called the exterminator in on very many occasions, and we didn't seem to be able to control them. And in the end, he came to the board one night and said, look, it's no good me trying to kill these cockroaches if the source of supply is still left alone. And after exhaustive investigations, we traced the source of supply to two beautiful date palms that were in front of the synagogue. Now, these date palms were supposed to have been originally imported from the Holy Land when the synagogue was consecrated. I'm not sure whether they came out in seed form or in plant form, but the board then had to decide whether we'd put up with these cockroaches, which were unfortunately very heavily infested, or remove the palm trees. And sadly to relate, we had to decide on the removal of the palm trees. Around the palm trees were lawns, lovely green lawns. And at the time the palm trees were removed, we also removed the lawns and concreted the front apron of the synagogue as it remains today.